Just so you know, I'm not fighting the dirty bed allegations. So, this is the video that I've actually wanted to make for a while, but as you probably know, see, I was actually going to post something last week, and I was supposed to do a bunch of other stuff, but for those in the local area, you might know where I'm going. There was a tornado that hit Garland, so I'm here so I can talk about Daredevil, because I've gotten into Daredevil ever since I saw the Netflix show sometime in high school. And I didn't finish season 1 before it got moved to Disney Plus, but at least I had that subscription while it was still around. And I did finish all 3 seasons, and I gotta say, it's the best superhero show that I've seen to date. Literally nothing can match it. It's genuinely timeless. In fact, I actually own seasons 1 and 2. Season 3, unfortunately, did not get a Blu-ray release before they migrated to Disney Plus, but even still, I'm sure there's a way to work around that. Still, it's such a shame. But anyway, it's pretty impressive what they managed to accomplish. Charlie Cox is basically the embodiment of Daredevil in the show, and I'm pretty sure most people can agree with that. It's a show that doesn't pull punches. Like, sometimes literally you see rips get pulled out, you see heads get smashed. It's complete pandemonium, and it doesn't shy away from any of the gore, which is very memorable in this day and age, especially because of the way that shows and movies are handled. Like, we've seen, some of you might have seen the Venom trailer that came out recently, and while I do appreciate the fact that there is a third installment, I can't help but just look at the missed opportunity of an R rating, because Venom literally eats heads in that trailer, as well as in the previous films. That, and I'm pretty sure there's some other movies that could benefit from an R rating, like, for example, Ghost Rider. I'm pretty sure he can benefit from that, especially with how brutal he is as a character, with him literally being Devil's servant. But still, back to the point. Daredevil's great, the character is great, his design is awesome, and his fighting style is great as well. And that came into attention when I was reading a few articles, and I stumbled upon one of Troy Baker discussing a potential for a Daredevil game to be released. He mentioned in the article, or at least the article mentioned, that he would want to at least direct, if not perform as Matt Murdock in that. And my god, that gives me a lot of ideas to draw. But that begs the question, could a Daredevil game really work? And that's what I'm here to solve, or at least talk about for a little bit, because this was not more apparent to talk about since I've collected the Zardsky run of Daredevil, or at least still am. I have issues 1 through 5. 4 and 5 came in the mail some time ago, along with this book, which is for another time. Long story short, I was in VFX history in one of my college classes, and they really got me into Stan Winston. I already knew his work before getting into that class, and getting this book will make it a lot more worth it now. But still, it got me to thinking a lot, especially with the way that both the 2003 Daredevil movie and the comics show his vision, per se. So on paper, it would be really hard to get into the mindset of this character, especially considering the Netflix show, obviously everything's on camera, and we don't really see what Matt sees up until he talks to Chloe at some point in season 1. Claire. Still, you get what I mean. And honestly, I don't think that artistically there has to be that many compromises. I think that the most that they can do is have a matte sky, potentially. And if that's ugly, then you can leave it as a regular sky, that's totally fine. Though if they really want to get into the perspective of the character, then have the sky black. Lighting, I don't think will have to be that much of an issue, especially considering, obviously, he's blind, which has to be involved with playing this character. The screens, I think, can be left blank, screens and billboards, as well as paper, but paper in particular can play a pretty big role, because in the Daredevil show and in the comics, it's kind of explained that he can use his touch so that he can sense the ink in certain documents and files. Like in one specific episode in season 1, he touches what he finds out to be a blueprint or redesign for one of the mobsters in Fisk's little operation. So I think that could be pretty cool. Having documents, their textures revealed as you touch them, I think would be a really awesome thing that they could figure out. That, and also handling enemies, which is one thing that we'll get to in a second. Let's get into the combat, because this one I think people would probably get most excited about if they were to hear a Daredevil game. It's pretty simple to me, but it's probably not the answer you're gonna expect. I think a lot of people might say that the Batman Arkham games are a good blueprint to come off of. I mean, come on. It's been the blueprint for several games, even games that might not seem to have that, like Assassin's Creed Assassin's Creed 10-way era, from 3 to Black Flag and then to Rogue. You know, some people also say that about the Middle Earth games with Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, along with a few other games like Insomniac's Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man duology that came out years prior. But honestly, I think Sifu is the best combat that you can use for a game like Daredevil, because Sifu's combat is brutal, it's punishing, but it's also just as rewarding. That and the parry system can allow for a decent amount of options, you know, parry to disarm, parry to simply counter, or parry to push. I think those could be pretty good ways to fight. And even if we're wanting to incorporate grapple, because Daredevil's mostly melee focused, you can use grapple as a shield, or potentially as a way to push other enemies away, which might get a little mixed up or a little messy, because, you know, obviously with Daredevil senses, you would have to fight people with guns, and even in the first episode of Daredevil Season 1, guns aren't that much of a problem for him, at least to dodge. But still, I'm pretty sure some of you can go into what I'm trying to say, especially with the way that Sifu handles weapons. You know, they use blunt weapons, sharp weapons, bow staffs as well. But obviously, you know, sharp weapons can be left out. If you want to fight with sharp weapons, then I guess use the blunt side. If they're knives, or if it's glass, then more for intimidation, even though Daredevil does cross the line at points. Just as an addendum to the whole style of combat, I think having items and weapons ricochet, if they can, would be pretty cool. You know, obviously if it's a bottle or a brick, they're not going to ricochet off of walls, but if you're using his signature sticks, then I think having them ricochet towards enemies, like having a wall on one side and then aiming accurately so that you can place a shot, I think that would be really cool to have. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Now, here's another one, which might be a big talking point. Suits. Obviously, there's going to be people that are going to ask for the Charlie Cox and Ben Affleck variants, considering that they're the only ones that we've seen on screen, at least to this day, to my knowledge. And I think it would be really cool roaming the streets of Season 1 Daredevil, at least before he gets his suit towards the end. Spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen the show, but genuinely, you need to watch that show. It's fucking fantastic. Other suits that we can have, other street level variants, there are plenty of suits that can be seen in the Zarsky run, and obviously a bunch of other ones that are street level, which I think would be a great basis to start with, because Daredevil is, at the end of the day, a street level fighter. So to have him in casual clothes with the mask on would be really cool. That and the signature red suit, obviously, as well as the gold and red variant that some people might not be familiar with, but that's actually Daredevil's original suit from the comics. That or the black and red suit as well, because that one is just so badass. I mean, we've already seen this with the Beyond variation of Batman, we've seen this with Miles Morales. Black and red just goes so fucking good, especially for an intimidating character like Daredevil. As far as continuity is concerned, this one I find really challenging to talk about, because it's difficult to talk about whether we should have Daredevil in its own self-contained game made by a different studio, or if the Sony people would allow Insomniac or somebody that would associate with Insomniac work with something like this. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of us know this by now, but Matt Murdock is referenced a lot in Insomniac Spider-Man games, and some people might even theorize that he's teased as potentially as a character for DLC, a supporting character at the very least. Especially considering that I'm pretty sure Matt Murdock's actually represented Spider-Man before, as well as other superheroes, which has been mentioned in Daredevil Zarsky Volume 2, which is how I'm going to refer to it whenever he's discussing a client in one of these comics. But still, point stands, if we're going to have a certain continuity, then it better be up to scuff. If we're doing it in Insomniac's world, then it should be after either Wilson Fisk potentially escapes, or it has to be a prequel game, like before the first Spider-Man game from Insomniac, where he literally gets arrested in the first act. In the first mission, no less. And as far as escalating difficulty or stakes, because we know that this is going to happen eventually, I think that the work's pretty much cut out, because, you know, we go from street level thugs to drug operations to Wilson Fisk's men to the Hand much later, and potentially serving with a specific couple of supporting characters, which I'll get into. But I think that it should be served in the sense that we have people that think they know how to handle knives or think they know how to handle guns, up to people that know how to handle knives and guns, which completely challenges how dodging works. Because I think dodging has to be, to add one more point towards the combat side of things, dodging has to be an absolute must as far as avoiding damage. I don't think parrying would be helpful that much. With blunt weapons, sure, but with sharp knives, that could serve as maybe. Guns, literally no. Unless you have the sticks that are vibranium, I guess. So I genuinely think dodging should be the biggest way to avoid damage. Kind of like in Dark Souls. Again, back to this, we have to know people that think they know how to handle weapons, to people that know how to handle weapons, to people that match Daredevil and really know how to handle weapons. Honestly, if they want, they can just take a page out of the Netflix series and go from street level thugs to the Hand to Bullseye towards season 3, because Bullseye was a genuine threat to Daredevil. Not to say that there weren't any. We know that one of the Hand's servants was there in season 1, which really fucked up Matt towards the end of the fight, and he had to stay bedridden for about a week or something. So there you go. I think the work's cut out to them, much like a bunch of other comic stuff, I'd imagine. As far as supporting characters, Foggy, of course, that's an inevitability. You know, partners in crime, avocados at law, if you will. I really love saying that. Potentially even Karen, though if my memory serves correctly, she actually died in the comics before she could even be relevant in a supporting way. Not to say that she wasn't supporting before, that's simply what I have read based off of the fandom. And then, if we're going to talk about the Hand, naturally we have to talk about Stick and Elektra, because Elektra and Stick are the pivotal reasons for why Matt is who he is. It's the reason that he can fight the way that he can. And I think Stick, being this senile old man that still whoops ass and is very cynical about Matt, and Elektra being that to a lesser degree, but still being passionate in a way that is questionable to Matt, it could serve for some pretty good beats, I think. And some people criticize that about Netflix season 2, but I thought that was good, personally, and even touching at certain points. But still, as far as narrative is concerned, in terms of like what can be a good story, it's impossible for me to say personally, because I'm not a writer. Even though I love the Zarsky run of Daredevil, I've seen the show, and I admittedly have yet to see the movie, but still. There might be some ideas that can roll into the head, but it's very hard to execute them, because I'm not a writer. I'm not the one that knows how Stan Lee operated when it came to this stuff, let alone one that can reinvent the wheel with his story. So that, I'll honestly leave up to you guys, or to whoever is willing to take up the mantle. Or even Troy Baker, which I'm pretty sure he has a very passionate amount of care for this character if he's wanting to discuss that. So, honestly, who knows? But that's kind of wraps things up. It might be a while before we even see something like this in production, let alone hear Troy Baker's word in it. And as far as the lawyer stuff is concerned with potential court cases, it could allow for some interesting moments. I think in the beginning they can do something with like a job gone wrong with a drug operation, or potentially some corporate funds or stocks are plummeting, and that's somehow a defamation thing or something. I know words, buzzwords, but still, I think there's a blueprint that can be set for gameplay. And as far as world building, I think it can be masterful, especially with the way that it's handled in Insomniac's world, because as much as I love the games narratively, some stuff about the background can leave a little bit to be desired. I think that they did a bit better with Spider-Man 2 and even Miles Morales, because Miles Morales really hit the nail on the head in terms of what it's like to be part of a community and helping that community. which is so touching, and I'll replay that game in Christmas time, naturally. But I think that there can be something to be said about being street level, very street level with Daredevil, unintentional bar, because it handles a lot harsher subjects that I don't think even Spider-Man could allow for. Yes, Spider-Man 2 tried to get to that point, and I guess it could have succeeded for some people, but for me it personally didn't, because I think the story of that game was a bit rushed, and which I don't think is a hot take at all. But honestly, had they had another 4 hours into the story of Spider-Man 2, I think it would have been a lot better. But still, I think they have their work cut out for them, and I could hope the best if I do hear something like that in production. And naturally, of course, I genuinely hope Daredevil Born Again is good. I liked his cameo in She-Hulk. Yes, I was gibbering about that show when I tried talking about it, but for what it is, it's an okay show. Is it bogged down by certain PC thinking or PC thoughts? Yes, but I still think it's a fun show. And the cameo with Matt Murdock was very nice. So, that wraps it up. You'll excuse me, I gotta finish the plat for Dark Souls because goddamn is that taking so long. And I will see y'all when I see you. Y'all take care of yourselves. Stay indoors for the summer, drink plenty of water. I'll see y'all around.